3 days later, outside Yidu City. The road intersection here had noticeably grown larger. The flow of people had increased, and the ground was totally covered with horse hoof prints and deep wagon ruts. Song Yu could already see a first glimpse of its prosperity. He was sitting under the tent of a roadside stall at the city entrance and eating wontons. The Calico cat lay beside his bowl, eating a ball of meat filling that Song Yu had bought from the stall owner. The stall was packed with traveling merchants, and their voices were noisy. "Have you heard? The fog spirit at that part of Liangshui Hollow has been eliminated." "Really?" The news came from Zhengwei Armed Guard Agency, and even the Wuxian tea merchants are spreading the word, saying that part is now safe. The Wuxian tea merchants are trustworthy. As for Zhengwei Armed Guard Agency, they make a living doing this and certainly wouldn't lie. Did Nanqiu County hire a master again? I heard it wasn't like that. It seems that a young Taoist priest passing by eliminated it easily. There was no scuffle, but the fog spirit was gone just like that. Oh my, that's incredible. Even the masters at Taiyan Temple don't necessarily have this ability. Taiyan Temple is just famous and has grand buildings. How many masters does Yidu have? What master will practice cultivation in the city? That's true. If you're looking for masters, you have to go outside the city. Slurp, Song Yu slurped his hot wontons. With each bite, the umami of the meat filling and green onions filled his mouth. He tilted his head back and closed his eyes with a long-lost sense of satisfaction. Although he had arrived in a relatively backward era, Song Yu had never neglected fulfilling his culinary appetites during these years in the Taoist temple. He even sought out many ingredients he couldn't eat in his previous world to make up for other deficiencies. If he couldn't get chili peppers or tomatoes, he'd get bear paws and Chinese giant salamanders. He had had enough of steamed pancakes and steamed buns these past few days. "Is it tasty, Lady Calico?" "It's tasty." "That's good." He had promised to let Lady Calico taste the local delicacies of different places, but she had not gotten to eat meat until that day. He felt really ashamed. Those merchants were still discussing him and the fog spirit. Traveling merchants earned their living by traveling, so the safety of the route was certainly their top concern. Bandits were still fine as they only wanted money, but spirits were life-threatening. Song Yu wasn't very interested in this and continued to eat while thinking about his accommodation problem in Yidu. He planned to stay in Yidu for a few months. Firstly, to stop and rest here to experience the prosperity and culture of Yiju's seat of local government, the third largest city in the realm. He could visit famous mountains, scenic spots, and temples in the surrounding areas. Secondly, the largest temple fair in the whole of Yizhu will be held in a while. It was held once a year and the liveliest event. He might be able to see something genuinely marvelous in this world worthy of his interest. It would add some delight to his boring life. Buying horses and mules at the fair would also be cheaper. In that case, he needed to find a place to stay. Inns typically catered to long-term stays, which was convenient but might not be very economical. Renting a house might be cheaper. Slurp, Song Yu finished his last wonton and lifted his bowl to finish the last drop of soup. After waiting for the Calico cat to finish the meat filling, he poured water into the palm of his hand and carefully let Lady Calico drink until she had enough. Then he paid the bill and left. The total was 20 wen. A bowl of wontons was 10 wen. The stall owner said he would charge the same price for the ball of meat filling as a bowl of wontons. The water came free with the wontons. A few steps away was the city gate. The city gate was built of green bricks. It was pitted and weathered with the marks of history. There were soldiers standing at the side checking those entering and leaving the city. Notices were posted on the walls. They were mainly wanted posters and notices seeking masters to eradicate demons and ghosts in various places. These notices were somewhat interesting. Among the wanted, there were skilled martial artists and Taoist figures. Song Yu had a look at those notices about local demons and ghosts. Most of the rewards for eradicating them were quite substantial. However, the demons and ghosts listed on these notices pasted here were probably not easy to deal with. In addition, there were many brokers and idlers waiting here. In this era without navigation systems, they offered travel guidance, casual labor, and intermediary services. However, they rarely seemed to target Taoist priests as customers. Perhaps they feared that Taoist priests wouldn't pay up or would lecture them about karma. In short, they didn't approach Song Yu. As Song Yu reached the gate, debating whether to call for a broker to help him rent a house, he suddenly ran into an acquaintance. "Mister." He turned to see that it was the merchant surnamed Li and his party. It seemed they were leaving the city to return to Wuxian. "Greetings," Song Yu bowed to him. The cat at his feet also stood on her hind legs like a human, imitating him and bowing to the merchant surnamed Li. When did this start? It seemed to have begun 3 days ago after he bought her small fish as a friendship gift. She started occasionally mimicking Song Yu's words and actions. Oh my, the merchant surnamed Li hurriedly returned the bow, surprised by the bowing cat at his feet. Then he bowed again after he recovered from the shock, not daring to ask about or to slight the cat. Mister, have you just arrived in Yidu? I was delayed on the road for a few days. If you had arrived a day earlier, we would have hosted a banquet for you. The merchant surnamed Li said with great regret, though it was uncertain if he really meant it. If I had arrived a day earlier, we would have missed each other. That's true, the merchant surnamed Li paused. How long do you plan to stay in Yidu? Where are you staying? I'm planning to find a broker to rent a house and stay briefly for a few months. We have a small courtyard house behind our tea store. It's a bit cramped. However, if you want to stay for a few days and can put up with it, you could save some rent money. I won't trouble you. I figured you might not find it suitable. However, Yidu's brokers can be tricky to deal with. I have a brother-in-law who works in this line of business in Yidu. He's honest. If you need, I can bring him over to meet you right now. The merchant surnamed Li said with a grin. When the time comes, it would be convenient for me to visit you again too. That would be helpful. Please wait a moment. The merchant surnamed Li turned and ran over. He returned with someone who was nearby, explaining to him along the way. When they reached Song Yu, both bowed. Mister, this is my brother-in-law. I'm Wang Jai, pleased to meet you. I'll entrust this to you. I will do my best. The merchant surnamed Li and his party soon left the city again. Their figures grew smaller and smaller along the yellow dirt road and the distant green mountains. Traveling merchants and porters continued to arrive in the distance. Song Yu followed Wang Jai into the city. Yidu, like most cities of this era, was laid out in a grid pattern with crisscrossing roads. It was hard to get lost, but easy to go in circles in the alleys. Wang Jai indeed seemed to be an honest person. He showed Song Yu several houses. However, either the price was beyond Song Yu's expectations, or the quality of the houses and the surrounding environment didn't meet his requirements. Great Yan's city real estate prices were not only the highest in history, but also more than 10 times higher than in the previous dynasty. The main reason was that Great Yan had abolished the equal land system, no longer allocating land and house plots to every person. The simultaneous development of the commercial economy promoted population movement, leading to population concentration in cities. This caused what was possibly a historic city housing price surge. At the moment, a house in Yidu started at 1,000 guan, and rents had also soared accordingly. Song Yu, helpless, resorted to a method his master had mentioned before. Are there any haunted or unlucky houses in the city? Wang Jai was taken aback upon hearing this. He sized Song Yu up. You don't mind such houses? Are there really such houses? There are indeed, quite a few. Some cause illness and bad luck to those who move in, some ruin fortunes, and some suffer from hauntings every night. Which type do you want? The cheapest one. I know a house that's in a quiet location but convenient when it comes to buying groceries. It's rumored to be haunted. Several families have rented it but moved out within days. It used to be 1,000 yuan a month. If you're interested, I'll take you to see it first. If you like it, it will help the landlord out as well. Thank you. Please come with me. Wang Jai found out that it was the first time Song Yu had come to Yidu, and that it was his first time renting as well. Thus he explained some rental regulations as they walked. Great Yan's brokers were quite particular, mainly due to strict official control of house rentals and brokers. Rentals had to go through brokers, and only brokered contracts were recognized by the authorities. Every broker had to be registered with the authorities, and commissions were also fixed. The authorities even launched many laws to protect the rental market, such as the principle that buying and selling does not break the lease. This principle was already in place in this era. In addition, the rental market includes the Housing Bureau, a government agency that manages housing resources, specifically public rental housing. Ordinary people come to the city for work, to take up posts as local officials, or from other places to study and prepare for exams. What do they do if they cannot afford rent in the city? They could rent houses from the bureau. Many things amazed Song Yu. He wasn't surprised they existed, but that they already existed in the present era. Immediately after his response, he realized his surprise seemed to carry a kind of superiority and arrogance due to coming from a more advanced civilization. It was truly inappropriate, and he couldn't help lapsing into reflection. 2 hours later, the two, along with the cat, arrived at a small courtyard house. This courtyard house was in the north of the city, a relatively valuable location with flourishing commerce and easy access to water. The courtyard house was in the middle of a small alley. Not far from the entrance, There was a large tree with stone tables and stools underneath for resting in the shade. The wooden door's red paint had faded with age long ago. The trees that were originally planted in the courtyard extended their branches over the top of the courtyard walls. Passers-by looked oddly at them when they saw that a broker had brought someone to look at the house again. It seemed that the house indeed had some problems. "You must be skilled," Wang Jai repeated, seemingly to comfort himself. The door was unlocked with a rustic metallic clink. As Wang pushed open the creaky door, the courtyard appeared in front of Song Yu's eyes. "You can go in and take a look," Wang Jai said, but he remained standing at the door. Song Yu didn't mind. He nodded and stepped inside. It was evident the courtyard had originally been exquisite, with plum trees and bamboo. It had just been uninhabited for a long time, so it was thick with weeds. The bamboo forest behind the house had grown into the courtyard. The landlord said that if you are willing to rent, the contract can be written for just 1 month. According to the law, rent is paid monthly from the 6th day. The first 5 days are for you to move in and put the house into order. Song Yu strolled around the courtyard and then turned to ask, "What's the price?" "Still 1,000 per month." "I'll take it." "Great." After signing the contract, the agreement came into effect. Song Yu sent Wang Jai off. Letter 1D4 BB, letter 1D4 C7, letter 1D4 52, letter 1D6 26, letter 1D6 38, letter 1D4 52, letter 1D4 B8, letter 2134, letter 1D6 2E. Lady Calico wandered around the courtyard, seeming uneasy in the new environment again. She sniffed here and there, apparently sensing something. She suddenly turned her head and asked Song Yu softly, "Are we staying here today?" "We'll stay here tomorrow too. And the day after. We'll stay here for a while. This house really seems to be haunted." "Yes. Why are we staying in a haunted house? Are you afraid of ghosts?" "I am a cat god, and cat gods are not afraid of ghosts." The calico cat followed him like a shadow. "But this is a ghost's house. We're short of money, so we have no choice but to disturb it." "I don't know what being short of money means." "It means we don't have much money." "I also don't know what money is." "It's what I used on the road to buy pancakes and steamed buns. I also used it to buy meat for you. Renting a house to live in also costs money. If we spend less on the house, we will have more money to buy fish and meat to eat." "Oh," Lady Calico seemed to understand somewhat. Just as she was about to ask what to do about the ghost, she saw Song Yu turn to face the courtyard. He bowed and calmly said, "Yidu's housing prices are really high and we're short of money. We have no choice but to stay here for a while. If we cause any disturbances, please forgive us." The calico cat hurriedly bowed too and stuttered, "Please forgive us." The courtyard remained quiet, with only the sound of the wind rustling the bamboo. It was near dusk, but the sunshine still lingered, casting a slanted glow on the roof tiles. The dunce caps between the tiles were like colorful flowers. Ignoring the overgrown weeds, it was indeed a beautiful little courtyard. Chapter 11, The Lady Ghost's Song and Dance. "We'll clear the weeds in the courtyard tomorrow. Today, let's head out first to buy some things before it gets dark." Song Yu said to the calico cat, "Do you want to stay in the courtyard and rest or come with me?" "I will go with you." "Shall I carry you?" The calico cat tilted her head and stared at Song Yu. Song Yu smiled at her. "I just noticed you've been walking all day and might be tired." "I'm not tired." "All right." Song Yu pushed the door open and walked out. The calico cat followed him with small, quick steps. This world seemed to be in the midst of transitioning from a 2 meals a day schedule to 3 meals a day. Depending on one's economic situation, many people have already started eating 3 meals a day. Some still alternated between 2 and 3 meals. At this time of day, those who ate 3 meals were just beginning their meal, while those eating 2 meals had long finished eating. Thus there were many idle people sitting under the big trees, chatting and enjoying the cool shade. Some held palm leaf fans to swat mosquitoes, while others held bowls. The atmosphere was lively. Seeing Song Yu emerge from the courtyard, the people resting in the shade stopped chatting in unison. They couldn't help giving him odd looks. Seeing that he was wearing a Taoist robe, their gazes became even more curious. It seemed like he had become the new topic of conversation. Although Song Yu was just a temporary resident, he nodded to them in greeting before walking away. In Great Yan, there was no market district system, so you could buy things anywhere. However, shops were still noticeably concentrated in certain areas. Their current area was primarily residential, so they had to go further down to buy things. They hadn't walked far before those people resumed their discussions. Song Yu didn't listen carefully because it was getting dark soon, and he needed to hurry. He just muttered to himself as he walked, repeating the things he needed to buy. The priority was not yet bedding. It was just past beginning of autumn, not yet end of heat. It was still sizzling hot in the city. Since he could endure the cold nights in the mountains, in the city there was nothing to fear. Songyu had a look around before leaving. He saw that the courtyard house still had cleaning tools like brooms and dustpans, and that a lot of furniture items were still in order. However, there were no pots, bowls, ladles, or basins. The most important immediate task was to buy a pot and a bucket. He needed to gather firewood, draw and boil water before it got too late. He needed a hot bath. Following the straight alley down from the entrance, they soon reached the bustling district of Yidu. White walls and green tiles, a forest of eaves. The street was lined with shops on both sides. The shop entrances had all sorts of extremely personalized signboards. It was completely different from depictions in modern period dramas. Some signboards were nearly placed in the middle of the street. Some signboards were enormous. Some shops hung huge banners from the top, while others had their shop names written on enormous curtains hanging down at their entrances. Some even built large gateway arches at their entrances, occupying much of the street. Pedestrians either had to walk around them or duck under these gateway arches. It wasn't yet dark, but some shops had already lit their lantern boxes. In short, they did everything to appear grand, attract attention, and show off their strengths. People often said that modern-day ancient towns had become too commercialized. Yet modern-day ancient towns were quite modest compared to this. At least signboard designs were uniform, and city regulations prevented shops from extending their signs or gateway arches into the street. Yet in this era, this was a kind of cultural norm. "Wow!" Lady Calico exclaimed in amazement upon seeing this, almost forgetting to walk. When she recovered, Songyu had already walked far ahead. From her low vantage point, all the passers-by looked similar from the back. It stood there dazed for a while before finding Songyu waiting for her further up. She quickly ran to catch up, craning her head to look around curiously as she ran. They soon came across a shop, selling wooden buckets and basins. Songyu bought a bucket and a basin, offhandedly asking the shopkeeper where he could buy cookware. After putting away the bucket and basin, he headed straight over and picked out an iron pot. Iron pots had not been popular for long in this world, but were already household essentials due to their superior qualities. He also bought a pair of wooden clogs in passing. As they headed back, the sky grew dark. Some shop fronts had already lit their lantern boxes, which were a kind of large floor lamps that functioned as illuminated shop signs. They had started preparing for Great Yan's night market. Yes, there was no night curfew here. So many lanterns and candles. "Do you like them, Lady Calico? So bright. After we've tidied up tomorrow, would you like me to bring you out for a stroll at night?" The Calico cat didn't answer, but turned to look at Songyu. "Do you like glittering nights?" Songyu only smiled without answering. The nights here were far from bright enough. *********. That night, Constable Luo sat at the head of his bed. His feet were all red because they had just been soaking in a wooden basin. His wife helped to dry his feet with a cloth. He said, "I heard someone moved into the courtyard house opposite again. I just heard people talking about it when I got back from work." She answered, "I heard it was a young Taoist priest." "A young Taoist priest?" "Yes." His wife stood up while holding the cloth and spoke to him face to face. "Maybe he has some skills. If he can stay a little longer and bring some peace to that courtyard house from now on, it would be good." "Does it matter if it's peaceful? She never bothered us. When we have fallen asleep, she has stopped already," Constable Luo said. "That said, how many skilled Taoist priests are there, though there are plenty who can catch minor demons and ghosts? It still makes one uneasy. If you don't do shameful deeds during the day, you won't fear ghosts knocking at your door in the middle of the night. We know all our neighbors. She was a good person while alive, so she won't turn bad after death. What are you afraid of?" She asked, "How long do you think this Taoist priest will be able to stay?" "Young people are bold. Maybe he'll last a bit longer." "How long is a bit longer?" "Who knows?" Constable Luo sounded tired. At that moment, a woman's faint singing voice drifted over from across. The song was haunting and mournful. It chilled listeners in the night. It was a sound the nearby neighbors were all familiar with. The couple immediately stopped what they were doing. They held their breath and looked forward as if they could see through the door and walls into the courtyard opposite. Constable Luo sighed inwardly. He figured the young Taoist priest would likely report the ghost to the authorities in the morning. He would have to send someone over as a formality again. He had experienced this several times over the years. In any case, he would never be able to find that lady ghost. Gradually, he began to feel unexpectedly tranquil. He leaned back against the wall and actually started listening attentively to the song. Meanwhile, in the courtyard diagonally opposite, Songyu had just finished taking a hot bath and changed into clean clothes. His body was still damp and his garments were loose. The material of his garments was coarse but did not irritate the skin. They were very comfortable. Hearing this singing, he paused for a long time at the door. His hand was already on the doorframe, but he did not push the door open. Only after the song ended did he step out. In the courtyard, he saw a shadow flitting vaguely across the white wall. Its long hair extended beyond its waist, a fearful sight. Songyu simply bowed calmly. "Madam has a beautiful voice and excellent singing skills. Could you sing another song?" The shadow suddenly froze. Immediately, it vanished with a whoosh. Songyu was momentarily stunned and couldn't help shaking his head. Lowering his gaze, he saw the Calico cat crouching at the doorway. It seemed that she had been here watching over him the entire time he was bathing. "Lady Calico, what are you doing?" "What do you mean?" "Weren't you exploring the new house? Why are you sitting here at the door?" "I finished exploring. I heard you splashing around in there and was worried you might drown, so I came to the door to wait for you." The Calico cat tilted its head, eyes glinting with curiosity. "What were you doing in there?" "Taking a bath. Humans are so strange." "I won't drown." "Strange, strange." Songyu didn't bother with her. He walked back to his room wearing wooden clogs that creaked with each step. The room had already been cleaned, and the brand new bedding laid out. In the moonlight, he could vaguely see the cat darting past his feet. It jumped onto the bed before him. She looked back at him and said, "That ghost was talking just now." "I heard it." The sound of the talking was strange. "That's called singing." "What is singing?" "It's a melodious form of artistic expression." "I don't understand." "It's okay." Songyu paused, then looked at the Calico cat again. "Will you be sleeping next to me tonight again, Lady Calico?" "You sleep over there." The Calico cat looked at the other end of the bed, indicating where he should sleep. Then she looked away and continued lying down with her legs tucked under her body. "I will sleep in this corner tonight." "All right." The bed was quite large. Songyu lay down, but couldn't fall asleep right away. It wasn't because of the lady ghost in the courtyard. He didn't know the lady ghost's backstory or intention. Anyway, he had rented the house through proper channels and truly couldn't afford another house in the city. He would need to stay here for some time. Since he had to sleep here regardless, he might as well get a good night's sleep first. It was future plans that troubled him. His master had sent him down the mountain. She didn't just want him to cultivate blankly in a new location. However, it was a real headache thinking about how he could find some fun. Today, he passed by a Gulen wash with bright lights while shopping. It seemed to be a comprehensive place of entertainment offering various performances like plays, dancing, storytelling, acrobatics, as well as sports, along with food and drink. Perhaps he could give it a try. He should also buy some books to read. If he could buy a travel guide, it would be even better. Not only would it provide plans for the upcoming period, but it could also suggest future destinations. Before Songyu knew it, he had fallen asleep. There was some vague human movement outside during the night. Under the moonlight, human shadows and tree shadows intertwined dimly on the ground. This didn't disturb Songyu. It was Lady Calico who really disturbed him. Oh, she said she would sleep in the corner of the bed. She was unconsciously drawn to the warmth under Songyu's covers. She instinctively crawled under his covers. Cats are light sleepers and active at night. She would crawl out of the covers to check whenever she heard the slightest noise outside. After checking, she would wriggle back in. Sometimes, she would even wake Songyu to ask him what to do. Despite being disturbed like this the whole night, Songyu slept unexpectedly well. Perhaps it was because he hadn't slept in a bed for many days. He was woken up by the sound of a rooster crowing early in the morning, feeling refreshed and invigorated. Chapter 12, Just a Haunted House. The Calico cat pressed her forepaws firmly against the ground, each paw pad splaying out. She bit a weed tuft, trying hard to pull it out. Plop! The weed growing in the crack between the stone slabs was uprooted. The Calico cat quickly steadied herself to avoid tumbling. Then she dragged the weed tuft to the doorway. There was a small pile of about a dozen tufts. Next to it was a larger pile, about half a human-s height. The Calico cat paused and turned her head to glance at Songyu, who was bending over not far away. Then she looked again at the significant difference between the two piles of weeds. Her small face was expressionless, but she secretly envied the dexterity of humans. Then she ran back immediately to continue her weeding mission. An hour later, the courtyard became neat. "Lady Calico." "Yes." "Could I trouble you to go onto the roof and remove the wild grasses growing on the tiles too?" Songyu stood almost at the doorway, craning his neck to look at the roof. After hesitating for a moment, he finally decided to let the dunce caps be. This was despite the folks saying that having them grow on the roof causes a household's downfall and signifies bad luck. But they really were beautiful. Remember not to pluck out those dunce caps that look like flowers. Got it. The Calico cat nimbly climbed onto the roof in a few swift moves. The tiles clattered for a moment. Seeing the courtyard house gradually become more habitable due to his and the Calico cat's great efforts, Song Yu felt quite satisfied even if the house was just a rental. He spent the rest of the morning chopping unruly bamboo and trimming plum branches. The afternoon was spent purchasing various items. Song Yu was in no rush to buy everything at once and immediately turned the whole courtyard house into a perfect fit for his lifestyle. Instead, he strolled through the streets outside with Lady Calico, buying things whenever he saw the need without overthinking it. Surprisingly, this took up the entire afternoon. Throughout the afternoon, as they went in and out, neighbors continued to cast curious glances at him. Song Yu considered asking about the house's history in order to understand his temporary lodgings and his neighbors better. However, he got busy and felt it wasn't necessary. To others, a haunted house might be extremely terrifying. To him, it was just a bit tainted. No big deal. Before he knew it, it was evening again. Song Yu carried an old chair and sat down in the courtyard. He listened to the wind rustling the bamboo leaves and watched the scattered cumulus clouds tinged with sunset glow in the sky. The Calico cat wandered around the courtyard, occasionally chatting with him. For example, complaining about the lack of mice in the courtyard house and mentioning that the neighbors also had a cat. He would usually respond patiently and chat with her for a while. In this era, a day was neither long nor short. Song Yu woke up very early every day, but also went to bed very early due to the lack of entertainment activities. Compared to his life in the previous world, he gained the early morning just when dawn broke. A day is more complete when one experiences the dawn. On the flip side, he lost much of the night that just began after dark. Once he got used to it, though, he found it quite good. The clouds overhead gradually turned golden with the sunset, then briefly dyed pink before darkening to a deep gray, like ashes after a fire. It was as if the pure sky was reminding Song Yu of the era he was in. Night has fallen. The courtyard gradually darkened. Song Yu felt a gust of ghastly wind, and a cold chill spread over from the direction of the bamboo grove. He turned his head and noticed a faint shadow, blurry and indistinct. At the same time, the Calico cat ran over at once and stopped in front of Song Yu, looking around warily. "Are you protecting me?" The Calico cat didn't reply, and continued looking around. A shadow flickered among the bamboo. Song Yu looked closely and saw what seemed like someone dancing. The ornamental bamboo grew close to the white walls. As the light dimmed, it became hard to distinguish between bamboo and shadows against the white wall. There was a human shadow intermittently visible among the bamboo shadows, as if the white wall was her performance's backdrop. Each time he saw her shadow, she was in a different pose. She was as agile as a crane and moved freely at will. He rented a cheap house, and it even came with song and dance performances. Thinking about it, it was quite a bargain. Only after the dance ended did Song Yu stand up and bow towards that direction. He said, "Lady, since you've become a ghost, why do you linger in the house of the living? Is there some secret or lingering attachment?" No response, just like yesterday. Song Yu pondered and realized. She was likely driven by obsession. Remaining as a ghost was already her limit. However, she no longer retained all her memories or intelligence from when she was alive. Such ghosts had low intelligence. If they were malevolent ghosts, they were simply vengeful spirits who only knew to harm people. Even if they didn't harm people, they were difficult to communicate with. They would just engage in some activities they habitually liked to perform while alive. So be it, as long as they didn't disturb each other. Song Yu stretched and waited for the ghost to disappear. He looked down at the Calico cat by his feet and suddenly asked, "Lady Calico." The Calico cat quickly turned her head at his call. "Yes, what is it?" "Were you originally a house cat or a stray cat?" "Why do you ask?" "Just curious suddenly." "I wasn't a house cat." "Were you a stray cat?" "I had a mother. And then she starved to death." "I see." The term stray cat here refers to homeless cats without owners, not wildcats. Lady Calico was obviously not a wildcat. She was an exquisite and beautiful long-haired calico cat. According to her story, her mother was likely a house cat that had left her owner. A kitten's attitude towards humans is significantly influenced by the mother cat's teaching by word and example. Her mother was used to interacting with humans, which explained why she was intimate with humans. "I've always wanted to know how you became a demon." "I just did." "Fair enough." Song Yu shook his head, not pressing further. After thinking for a moment, he asked the Calico cat again, "In that case, Lady Calico should be a female cat, right?" The Calico cat immediately looked at him, as if he was an idiot. Song-yu could only shake his head again, pretending he never asked. He sat in the courtyard for a while longer and listened to 2 more tunes. With nothing else to do, Song-yu went back to his room to rest. He had a sort of premonition that perhaps his future nights would be spent like this for a long time. Thinking of this, he had to thank the ghost in the courtyard house. She more or less added some entertainment to the boring nights. \\\\. A few days later, Song-yu went out to buy an oil lamp and also filled a jug with lamp oil. He even spent a huge sum on a book called Yudi Jisheng. Yudi Jisheng was a relatively popular travel guide in this world at the moment. It detailed many well-known scenic spots, travel routes, accommodations, local specialties and delicacies, etc. It also described some immortal mountains, famous rivers, as well as Taoist and Buddhist temples. It helped Song-yu to get an overview of the realm. Upon returning home, he saw a group of people sitting under the large tree next door. Some were enjoying the cool shade while others were playing chess. He couldn't help going over to have a look. Several old men were playing Chinese chess. 2 were playing, while 3 or 5 others watched. Not far away, another group sat and chatted about trivial matters such as someone's daughter getting married and whose son couldn't find a wife. Mosquitoes were numerous and vicious during summer days. The people here wielded palm leaf fans, and the night was filled with the sound of fans hitting their bodies. Over the past few days, Song-yu noticed a visible change in the neighbors' attitudes toward him. Initially, they had the attitude of watching the show, not believing he would be able to stay long. They often privately discussed how many days he would last. However, they just observed him come and go each day without any panic or fear over the past few days. He appeared to have settled in. Combined with his initial arrival dressed in a Taoist robe, the neighbors began to regard him with respect. After Song-yu had watched for a while, someone came over and started a conversation. "Young mister, have you had dinner?" Song-yu turned to see that it was the lady from the house diagonally across the street. He vaguely remembered that her husband seemed to be a public official. "I have. This house hasn't been rented out for years. Even when someone rented it, they would break the lease the same day," the lady curiously asked. "You live here and hear this ghost singing every night. Are you really not afraid at all?" Her question drew many curious glances, aimed at Song-yu in the dim evening light. Clearly, everyone was interested in such a topic. Perhaps this haunted house had provided them with much fodder for conversation during their boring leisure time over the past few years. They had talked about it for a long time, but this was the first time they saw someone living in it for so many days. Naturally, it added a new topic about the house to discuss. Nevertheless, Song-yu just watched the old men playing chess and said with a smile, "Don't you all hear it too?" So he really wasn't afraid. Some people felt a chill in their hearts. He had thought he might have gone to bed early or slept soundly and missed it. Everyone looked at one another. "We know the ghost can't leave this courtyard. Besides, when it's not occupied, she only acts up every few days," the lady said. "Moreover, we don't do shameful deeds during the day, so we don't fear ghosts knocking at the door in the night." "That's true." Song-yu continued watching the old men play chess. The wooden chess pieces clattered sharply and clearly against one another. Humans would become ghosts after death. By nature, ghosts were weaker than humans. Any ghosts stronger than humans would have had some cultivation skills. Most ghosts would be weaker than humans. Many malevolent ghosts could only harm people through deception and intimidation. A normal person who was neither greedy nor fearful had little reason to fear ghosts. Song-yu has even heard of a strong man encountering a ghost at night who turned the tables by bullying the ghost instead. At this moment, the lady asked again, "Since you have the skills, why didn't you exorcise the ghost?" "It's just a wisp of a remnant soul. I owe her gratitude for allowing me to rent such a cheap house. How could I repay kindness with enmity?" Song-yu turned towards the older married woman and bowed with a smile. "Besides, long nights can be dull. With her around, it adds a bit of interest." Hearing this, many listeners immediately understood. This young Taoist priest was not only really unafraid, but he truly had skills. To him, a ghost that ordinary people would hasten to avoid was unworthy of attention. Chapter 13. A visitor arrives. Constable Luo returned late again that day. His wife, Madame Wang, brought over hot water to wash his feet as before. Seeing her husband's weary face, she couldn't help but ask, "Still haven't caught the man." "How could we catch him?" Constable Luo sighed deeply. "That man is paranoid and cunning. We set up several traps, but either the methods were ineffective or he detected them in advance and avoided stepping into them at all." "What methods didn't work?" "The ones suggested by the master at Taean Temple and the county head magistrate." There are still a few days left before the deadline. In my opinion, this hard approach won't work. The man may not be able to fly, but he can traverse through the earth. It's too much to be asking all of you to catch him. It's not as though you could possibly lift him off the ground so he can't touch it, Madame Wang said, carefully washing her husband's feet. You need to find a true master to help. What other master can we find? The method of burying a manure circle was suggested by the master from Taiyan Temple, wasn't it? Maybe you can consult a different master. Where can we find another master? Constable Luo said, feeling both frustrated and despondent. I know some people who eliminate demons and exorcise ghosts. However, as you know, they're just a bunch of bold folks who know some crude tricks. At most, they can come up with some lousy ideas, but they can't really help me. I think the young Taoist priest opposite has real skills. Why not go and consult him? That young Taoist priest, a master. Constable Luo couldn't help frowning. That young Taoist priest moved in next door several days ago, and he doesn't seem afraid at all. He comes and goes as normal every day. Tonight, I chatted a little with him and asked if he wasn't scared of the lady ghost in the courtyard. Guess what he said? What did he say? Madame Wang recounted the conversation she had that evening. After listening, Constable Luo didn't necessarily think Song Yu had displayed great skills, but he immediately thought he was a unique person. Not fearing ghosts might just mean he's bold. Even if he has real skills, it doesn't mean he can help. Constable Luo said as he lifted his legs out of the wooden basin. He didn't immediately place all his hopes in this. If we can't find a solution in a few days, I'll bring gifts over and pay him a visit. Madame Wang crouched down again to dry his feet. \\\\. I alone am still sleeping until the sun is high in the sky. I am not an immortal, but it's better than being an immortal. Song Yu had slept until noon again. He was getting up later, and later these few days. Sometimes he lay in bed until noon before getting up. Other times, he woke up early but stayed in his room meditating and cultivating until noon before going out. This way, he could save eating breakfast. In the afternoon, he would read. If the weather was nice, he'd go for a stroll, buy some groceries, and cook dinner himself. In the evenings, he would go out to enjoy the cool air. He would join the neighbors living around him to listen to them chat about domestic trivialities and experience life in Yidu City. Every night, the ghost in the courtyard would sing a few songs or dance as usual. Sometimes, he could see her figure and features clearly. She was a woman who was no longer young. Once Song Yu got used to it, he no longer paid attention to her. He really just treated her as a diversion from the monotony of life. He even developed a habit of listening to her songs. He wasn't startled even when she sometimes appeared suddenly at night. It was Lady Calico who was easily startled. She would often jump in fright when she encountered the ghost turning a corner, or when the ghost suddenly appeared while she was doing something. However, last night, the lady ghost would sometimes wander through different rooms. Last night, she actually opened the door to Song Yu's room and stood there watching him for a long time. It undoubtedly disturbed his sleep. If not for his conscience, he would have blamed his waking up late on the lady ghost. But this problem nevertheless needed a solution. Song Yu thought about it and decided to go out and buy some yellow hemp paper as well as a brush, inkstone, and cinnabar. He would draw some talismans to stick on his bedroom door to keep the lady ghost away. At the same time, more and more people heard about him these few days. They felt that he had real skills, so they began coming to him for advice on dealing with being cursed and running into ghosts. Some also wanted to buy talismans to ward off evil or ensure peace. Song Yu thought this could be a good way to earn some money for groceries. This was also a significant source of income when he was at the Taoist temple. There seemed to be many shops selling miscellaneous items near the Gulen Wash. After his meal, he could go and have a look. With these thoughts, Song Yu got up. There was still some pickled vegetable porridge left over from last night. He heated it up in the pot, and it became his lunch. It was quite tasty. After eating and washing the dishes, Song Yu headed out directly. He just told the Calico cat in the courtyard, "Lady Calico, I'm going out. Please look after the house." "Got it," the Calico cat replied, absorbed in playing and not even looking up. Song Yu went out and walked down the little alley. Not far along was a Gulen Wash. As mentioned before, this was a comprehensive entertainment place with food, drinks, and leisure activities that thrived on the prosperity of Yidu. Even during the day, it was lively. As he walked through, besides opera singers, there were also storytellers, wrestling and martial arts matches, pitchpot and archery games. Each had their own form of enjoyment. Song Yu had come to buy yellow paper, but could not help being drawn by an old storyteller, and he sat down to listen. He even ordered a pot of tea. Ianki led his own soldiers in relentless pursuit from water to land, determined to kill Marshal Ma right there. At the critical moment, Marshal Ma escaped up a small path. Ianki hurriedly followed, but suddenly a great general appeared on the road ahead. What a majestic general. He wore a black helmet, black armor, and a black battle robe. He had black tiger head battle boots on his feet and carried a red-tasseled spear. He rode a spotted beast. His countenance was like jade and his eyes were like cold stars. Behind the general were 500 military officers carrying sabers. They were tall and each carried a great saber which was 5 kai long. The blade was 2.5 kai and so was the handle. The great sabers were wide and thick with sharp edges. The backs were as thick as a finger and the edges slightly thicker. They shone brightly and coldly. Even from several jianghu away, they exuded a threatening chill aura. Each man also carried iron-bodied bows 3 and eagle feather arrows 4 on his back. Each of them was like a fierce winged tiger or a flood dragon 5, swimming in the sea. It was none other than General Chen Xin, also known as Chen Zi. Ianki was stunned. How could Chen Zi be here? More importantly, who among his men could be a match for Chen Zi? Who could stand against Chen Zi's own soldiers? This was a true historical event in this world that happened a few years ago. At the time, Ma Hong, the great marshal of the Third Army, carelessly suffered an ambush during a war in the northern part of Great Yan, and his army was defeated. Just as he was about to be captured by the enemy commander, General Chen Xin arrived. General Chen Xin was now a popular figure in storytellers' tales. According to rumor, he almost single-handedly held off Ianki's troops, saving the marshal and becoming a legend. The old storyteller recounted this story with great passion, albeit with some artistic embellishments. Xianxia was very interested in such stories. It was mainly because he felt that such legendary tales would surely be recorded in history. In that case, people reading history many years later would most likely come across this story. Reading a story that he had heard 1,000 years ago would be comforting for someone stuck in ancient times like him. So he listened until the end before getting up to leave. He hadn't forgotten his original purpose in coming out. After wandering around the entire Gulen Wash, he successfully found a shop selling yellow hemp paper. While drawing talismans didn't necessarily require yellow paper, it had become customary in both Buddhist and Taoist practices and among folk practitioners to use it a long time ago. Most talismans used yellow paper. It didn't have to be hemp paper either. Normally, it was possible to use both rattan and hemp paper. Bamboo paper was rarely used, and Xuan paper wasn't used at all. Usually, different places had their own customs. For example, where hemp paper was produced, yellow hemp paper was mostly used for talismans. In places producing rattan paper was mostly used. Yizhu produced both bamboo paper and hemp paper in abundance. Xianxia was used to using yellow hemp paper. This shop's paper was well-made, thick and durable. Such paper wouldn't easily discolor for a long time unless it got damp. Yellow hemp paper was somewhat thicker and coarser than white hemp paper, with a light yellow hue. The reverse side had some grass fibers and paper scraps embedded, but these didn't affect its usage. However, when Xianxia held up a sheet of yellow hemp paper against the sky and looked it over, he felt the color was slightly off. "Sir, what's the matter?" "I'm not sure if it's my eyes, but it seems a bit reddish." "Oh, sir, you have sharp eyes. You noticed it right away." The shopkeeper immediately forced a smile. "This batch of paper was made just yesterday. My naughty child accidentally mixed in some red dye during the paper-making process. However, most people wouldn't be as observant as you." "I see. Will it affect your usage?" "Not much." Hearing this, the shopkeeper immediately breathed a sigh of relief and boasted, "Sir, you've come to the right place. I'm not boasting, but I believe my hemp paper is among the best in the whole of Yidu. Even the big shop's paper can't compare with mine. It's just that my shop isn't well known. However, anyone who buys from me will surely come back. Give me a bit of a discount. It's already the cheapest." After some bargaining, Xianxia bought a stack of yellow hemp paper, a brush, an ink stone, and an ink stick. He unexpectedly spent over 300 wen. He had bought the most basic brush, ink stick, and ink stone. If he wanted better ones, the prices would have no limits. In this era, reading and writing were truly expensive. He bought the cinnabar from another shop. On the way back, he saw a butcher's shop. Since he had already spent quite a bit, he bought over a caddy of pork and then some garlic sprouts. Then he returned satisfied. Creaked. As soon as he opened the courtyard door, he saw a mottled shadow quickly running out from the house. She said as soon as she saw him, "Taoist priest, people came knocking on the door looking for you just now." "Who? Did you open the door for them?" "It seemed to be the people you met at the city gate that day and the person living opposite." The Calico cat tilted her head and stared at him. "I didn't open the door. You told me not to speak in front of ordinary people. It's good you remembered. You need not fear them like tigers ate. What? Were there 2 groups of people knocking on the door? Yes, they even met at the door and chatted for a while. The Calico cat said. They said they'd come back tomorrow. Got it, thank you, Lady Calico. No need to be too polite. I bought pork, do you want it raw or cooked? The same as you. All right. Song Yu didn't bother anymore with that day's visitors. He took the meat and vegetables to the kitchen and started preparations. He cooked the rice, drained it, and put it in the steamer basket. The prime pork hindquarter meat was cooked with Sichuan pepper and fresh ginger until 80% done, then sliced thinly. He washed and chopped the garlic sprouts. Under Lady Calico's watchful eyes, he heated the pan with oil and stir-fried the pork slices over low heat until they curled. Then he stoked the stove's fire and added the garlic sprouts with a sizzle. Song Yu handled the entire process alone. Yet he wasn't flustered at all, but orderly in the midst of the busyness. He was seeking his own inner peace in this mundane human act of cooking. Not many condiments were necessary. With just fermented black beans and soy sauce for seasoning, a delicious dish of twice-cooked pork was ready. Stir-frying had only been popular for a few decades in this era, so this dish might not have existed yet. However, the aroma of a dish that should really belong many years in the future already filled the small courtyard. Chapter 14. First Order's Revenue. Constable Luo returned home somewhat earlier than usual that day. His wife, Madame Wang, was asking if he had visited their neighbor. This woman was quite a gossip, which reminded Constable Luo of the group of people he had encountered that afternoon. He really had no other ways left that day. Thus he had taken along some gifts in the afternoon to visit the new neighbor his wife spoke so highly of, who seemed to possess the air of a master. However, he stood at the entrance and knocked on the door for a long time without any response from inside. All he heard were a few cat meows. Instead, he ran into several tea merchants from out of town and 2 armed guards as he was leaving. They were all carrying gifts from their hometowns, also intending to visit the young Taoist priest. After some mutual questions, Constable Luo learned. The young Taoist priest who had moved in across from them was the very master who had casually eradicated the fog spirit that had been causing trouble for months while passing by Liangshui Hollow. The fog spirit had been wreaking havoc along Jinyang Road, and it was nearly time to post notices about it on the city gate. Now that it was vanquished in a day, and the story had already spread far and wide in Yidu, especially since the master invited by Nanhua County had failed to eliminate it, but it had been effortlessly eliminated by a passing master. This made the tale even more captivating. Who would have thought that such a master would be living nearby? He might possess the ability to exterminate the fog spirit, but Constable Luo still felt he might not necessarily be able to help with his own problems. Nonetheless, he felt a greater respect for him. He thought about the gifts he had prepared today, which were a bag of dark brown sugar and a bottle of good wine. They were considered decent presents for visiting friends or relatives these days, as an ordinary family might not be able to afford them. Yet, they seemed a bit lacking in sincerity compared to what the tea merchants had brought. I'll prepare more generous gifts and visit again tomorrow, he was telling his wife, but then heard the eerie singing coming from the courtyard opposite again. It was the purest human voice. It was initially unsettling, but after a while, he felt that she sang better than the female singers in the Gulen Wash. He wondered if the young Taoist priest had returned home, and if he was back, what he was doing now. Did he really not mind the ghost in his house? \\\\. Song Yu cleaned off the stone table in the courtyard and enjoyed his dinner there in the cool evening. Tonight, he indulged in a bowl of steamed white rice. For some reason, the rice of this era exuded a rich aroma when steamed, a scent detectable even a few households away. It greatly roused one's appetite. Song Yu served himself a bowl and also a small portion on a plate for the Calico cat, along with some meat. Man and cat peacefully passed their time like this in the evening. A human shadow still flickered in the courtyard, and the ghost sang, but neither the man nor the cat seemed to notice. Is it tasty, Lady Calico? It's delicious. That's good. Song Yu picked up a piece of meat to go with the white rice. The taste was familiar, bringing a smile to his lips. The joy of human cooking was an ordinary person's poetry. Feeling full after drinking wine and eating a meal was the easiest way to feel contentment. With Lady Calico's company, he didn't feel lonely living here alone. He even began to think that it would be fine to settle down here permanently. After dinner, he sat and savored the taste for a while. Song Yu waited until the night deepened, then he lit the oil lamp. He tested the new brush and began drawing talismans. Although Hidden Dragon Temple was not famous for its talismans, Song Yu knew a few varieties acquired by several generations of temple owners during their travels. The most common talismans on the market were also the two kinds people often sought from Taoist and Buddhist temples, those to ward off evil and repel ghosts as well as those to ensure peace. Song Yu knew a few kinds of talismans that relied on spiritual energy to ward off evil and repel ghosts. As for talismans that ensure peace, they normally required invoking gods in order to borrow each god's power. Although Hidden Dragon Temple displayed many statues of Taoist deities, they were just dusted off every year on the 23rd of the 12th lunar month one, and the respect for them was limited. Hence, the Taoist priests of Hidden Dragon Temple usually didn't know how to draw such talismans. That day, Song Yu only drew ghost-repelling talismans. These kinds of talismans specifically repelled ghosts. For a moment, his spiritual energy caused a gust of wind that made the oil lamp's flame tremble. The light and shadows in the courtyard also flickered as his brush danced across the paper. The Calico cat was curious. Initially, she looked up from the ground but found it hard to see clearly. Thus, she jumped onto the stone table and came closer for a better look. Fortunately, she didn't disturb Song Yu and just watched. The man and cat seemed to share a natural rapport. Song Yu stopped after drawing 5 talismans. He folded them carefully. He strung one with hemp thread and hung it at the entrance to his bedroom to prevent the lady ghost from entering. He didn't hang any in other rooms, since he had said they would coexist peacefully without disturbing each other. In that case, he should leave her some space to move around. My apologies, Song Yu bowed towards the bamboo grove. Looking up, he saw the sky was filled with stars. The surrounding neighbors had long since gone to bed. The distant sounds of Chunaming Street couldn't reach all the way here. The night was extraordinarily quiet. It seems it's already end of heat, too. What is end of heat? Lady Calico asked. It means the weather will start to cool. Oh. Go to sleep, Lady Calico. All right. The Calico cat followed him into the house and onto the bed. Song Yu and Lady Calico had gradually grown familiar with each other over these couple of days. Despite being strangers coming together by chance, they had been depending on each other for some time. Song Yu always treated her with sincere regard, and the Calico cat was not cunning like humans. Thus, both parties had grown fond of each other with time. Cats loved warmth, and she often secretly slept next to him. \\\\. Early next morning, the rooster crowed at dawn again. Song Yu woke up somewhere earlier, put on his clothes, and meditated in the courtyard. According to his senses, that day was much cooler than the early morning of the day he arrived. The yellow plum tree in the courtyard had already started shedding its leaves. The wind blew, and Song Yu raised his hand, in passing to catch a fallen yellow leaf. Song Yu mused. End of heat. End of heat marked the end of the summer heat. End means stop, meaning that the summer heat had started to dissipate. The unbearable torrid weather was coming to an end, transitioning to cooler temperatures. Song Yu discarded the yellow leaf and closed his eyes again. The spiritual energy in the morning was always the clearest and densest, seeming to have life of its own as it surrounded him. It tempted the green lamp and caused a few more yellow plum leaves above him to fall. The city was waking up at this time, too. Outside, vendors were peddling vegetables, water, and firewood along the street. Their calls and the voices of bargaining were audible. Yet Song Yu did not find it noisy, but rather felt he was listening to the rhythm of the people's daily lives in this era. But at that moment, there was a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Song Yu opened his eyes, got up, and went to open the door. Standing outside was the merchant surnamed Li, and his party, including the 2 armed guards. Each one of them bore gifts. Greetings, mister. Please come in. Sorry to visit so early. If we have disturbed you, please forgive us, Mr. Li quickly said. We all very much wanted to visit and thank you, so I asked my brother-in-law for your current address, if this is inconvenient. No need for such formalities. Come in quickly. Song Yu, unaccustomed to such courtesies, invited them into the courtyard. The group looked nervous and looked at one another in dismay. They had long heard from Wang Jai that this courtyard house was haunted. It had been rented a few times over the past few years, but the previous renters had all broken their leases the very next day. Although the Taoist priest dared to stay since he was bold and skilled, as ordinary people, they couldn't help but feel apprehensive. They thought that it was broad daylight after all, and there were many of them. Moreover, the Taoist priest was present, so they eventually stepped into the courtyard one by one. Once they entered, the courtyard didn't feel eerie at all like the haunted house they had imagined. They saw it had been tidied up neatly, and a cool breeze from somewhere rustled the fallen yellow plum leaves. An indolent calico cat emerged from the house, stretching and yawning, immediately giving them a sense of tranquility and relaxation. It indeed felt cooler in the courtyard than outside. However, this coolness was not the kind that made one uneasy, caused one's hair to stand on end or goosebumps. It was a comfortable, clean coolness, like the moist freshness of the early morning outside after a good night's sleep, or the relief of a night breeze on one's face outside after the lingering heat of a sultry evening had been washed away. The group exchanged amazed looks, seeing one another's surprise. They quickly presented their gifts, thanking the Taoist priest for saving their lives. The gifts they brought were mostly homemade cured meats and sausages, as well as homegrown fine teas. The gifts fully showed their regard. "You're all too kind," Song Yu said, though he did not demur or decline. The pile of gifts was all placed on the stone table. Everyone felt relieved after seeing this. Then they saw the Calico cat jump onto the table, seemingly attracted by the meaty scent of cured meat and sausages, or perhaps inspecting the unfamiliar items that had entered its territory out of habit. It approached the pile of gifts and sniffed them all over, but no one shooed it away. "It's quite elegant of you to keep a cat for company," Mr. Li chuckled as he looked at Lady Calico, recalling the scene of this cat mimicking the Taoist priest's bow outside the city that day. When the Taoist priest reached Liangshui Hollow, he was still alone. However, he had a cat by the time he arrived in Yidu. It couldn't be a random stray he picked up in the mountains. It was likely a cat on the verge of becoming or already a demon. Thus it was taken in by the Taoist priest as a companion. Therefore, his tone remained very polite even when facing the cat. "It's good to have a cat for company. It keeps you from feeling lonely during your travels." "I think so too. The cat is fortunate to be able to accompany you. Rather than my accompanying her, it's me who needs her company more. It's hard to say whose good fortune it is." "What?" Mr. Li didn't think much of this at first, but the more he thought carefully about it, the more he found it profound. He could only say that the Taoist priest was indeed extraordinary. After chatting like this for a while, Mr. Li suddenly caught a glimpse of the yellow talisman hanging at Song Yu's bedroom entrance. He remembered the second purpose for their visit and couldn't help feeling exultation. "You know how to make talismans." "I know a few types of talismans for warding off evil. Be honest, we unfortunate merchants often travel through great mountains for years on end. It's hard to avoid encountering ghosts on the road at night and demons on mountain roads. We've previously sought out Wushan's Buddhist and Taoist temples and requested a few talismans to ensure peace. Unfortunately, they were simply ineffective or only served as warnings. We came today hoping to request a talisman to ward off evil and repel ghosts from you." Mr. Li said, "If our wish is granted, we would be very grateful." No need for such formality. This was one of Hidden Dragon Temple's services anyway. Song Yu immediately took out the talismans he had drawn the previous night. They were insufficient, so he spread out yellow hemp paper, brought out the cinnabar, and started drawing on the spot with his brush. The group was astonished. They couldn't see the spiritual energy moving with the brush and sealing into the cinnabar. However, they could see the wind caused by his brushstrokes, vaguely stirring the yellow plum tree leaves. Sometimes, they would witness some unusual phenomena when seeking talismans at Buddhist and Taoist temples in the past. Yet, it was never so obvious. Instantly, everyone felt reassured. Each person received 2 talismans and kept them close. For a while, they felt bold as if they would not be frightened even if they saw a fog spirit again. The folded triangular ones are ghost-repelling talismans for repelling ghosts. The square ones are demon-warding talismans for warding off demons. Ghost-repelling talismans cannot ward off demons, and demon-warding talismans cannot repel ghosts. Different talismans have different functions, so please remember. We will keep it in mind. Given that everyone had brought gifts, Song Yu initially did not intend to accept any money. However, their sincerity prevailed, and each gave him some pieces of silver. Thus, this can be considered the revenue earned from his first order. After finally seeing the group off, Song Yu returned to the courtyard and sat down cross-legged for a moment to feel the season's spiritual resonance and gather spiritual energy. But soon, he heard another knock on the door. He thought it must be his neighbor this time. Sigh. Disturbing my quiet cultivation. Chapter 15. I have a stratagem. Creak. The creak of the wooden door's hinge was rusty and drawn out. Outside stood a man around 30 years old, dressed in black clothes and boots. Although he didn't carry an iron ruler one or long saber, it was clear he was a constable or bailiff. At the moment, his hands were full of gifts, and a smile was on his face. "Greetings, mister." "Chief, what is this?" "Oh, I am Luo Jun, and I live diagonally opposite you," the constable said with a smile. "I've long heard that a master had moved into our Tianshui alley, but I've been too busy to visit. Please forgive me." "I'm unworthy of it." "I don't know." "Chief Luo, please come in." Song Yu quickly invited Constable Luo inside. In Great Yan, major officials were frequently reassigned, and actual local power mostly lay in the hands of minor officials. They could not be slighted. Among them, constables were technically military officials, but they were closely bound up with the livelihood of the people. They represented the government and often interacted with jianghu people, meaning that they had influence over both sides of the law. Moreover, constables' positions in Great Yan were often hereditary. With great power and connections passing down through generations, they could not be provoked in their locales. Yet Constable Luo was very respectful towards Song Yu at the moment. Upon entering the courtyard, he placed the gifts he brought on the stone table. There was fine wine brewed in-house from Xianxia's shop, dark brown sugar from Jiu County, a yard of fabric from He Family Village, and even a tea set, showing great consideration. I should have visited sooner, but I've been busy catching a burglar lately, Constable Luo said, his hands finally free to execute a bow. Yesterday afternoon, I finally had some free time and wanted to visit, but unfortunately you happened to be out. How could I deserve such lavish gifts? Song Yu looked at the presents and frowned. You are a master, of course you deserve them, Constable Luo continued before Song Yu could respond. To be honest, when I came yesterday, I coincidentally met some tea merchants from Wushan County who also came to visit you. After talking with them, I learned that the master who eradicated the fog spirit on Jinyang Road was none other than you. I just did it in passing. You eliminated a menace for the people without seeking fame or profit. I greatly admire that. I should salute you, Constable Luo said, bowing again. You're too polite. Song Yu only displayed a helpless expression. Such polite behavior was deeply ingrained in Great Yan society. Everyone spoke courteously and with the best manners. For instance, the armed guard surnamed Chen was not an armed guard chief, yet ordinary people addressed him as one. Similarly, Song Yu initially didn't know whether Constable Luo was a constable or a bailiff, yet he referred to him as chief from the start. Everyday conversations were extremely polite. Song Yu didn't know if it was habitual, but he didn't like it. Fortunately, Constable Luo was a savvy person. He realized that a master like Song Yu probably didn't appreciate beating around the bush. Being more straightforward might even earn him some favor. To be honest, besides visiting a neighbor, I also have a matter to consult you on. Chief Luo, there's no need to be so polite. Just speak directly. It's a long story, Constable Luo sighed deeply. In the past year or two, burglaries have been frequent in Yidu City. The burglar only steals treasures from the homes of the nobility, even stealing from the prefect. The bigwigs in the city are all furious, ordering us to catch the burglar immediately. Despite trying all kinds of methods, we haven't been able to track him down. For a time, common people in the city even spread rumors that it's the work of demons or ghosts. Only a few months ago did we finally see the burglar's true face and understood how he secretly slips into the homes of the nobility to steal and escape our pursuit. Can that burglar fly or traverse through the earth? You've heard of it too. I saw a wanted notice at the city gate. Song Yu recalled seeing a wanted notice for a great burglar who could traverse through the earth at the city gate when he arrived. That's the burglar. Though he can't fly, he has somehow acquired the ability to traverse through the earth, Constable Luo said, looking at Song Yu. Do you know anything about this art of earth traversing too? I understand it somewhat. Really? Constable Luo unconsciously blurted out. Realizing he had been too abrupt, he quickly explained. That burglar has evaded capture for so long that the bigwigs in the city have issued an ultimatum. Yet we're at our wits' end. We've set traps many times, but the burglar is cowardly, cunning, and suspicious by nature. He never enters into the traps. The day before yesterday, he stood not far from us and mocked us. It's really abominable, and I'm desperate to catch him. And to be honest, I have sought advice from the master at Taeyan Temple, but Constable Luo trailed off, shaking his head. What idea did the master from Taeyan Temple come up with? Song Yu asked, suddenly curious. Master Guangheng of Taeyan Temple suggested we dig a ring of pits and bury manure in them to foil the burglar's earth-traversing technique. Constable Luo smiled helplessly as he said this. It might work with some who are not skilled. So Master Guangheng wasn't pulling my leg. The idea of breaking spells with filth has always existed. Perhaps the master saw that you were impatient, but he was uncertain himself. That's what I thought. Constable Luo finished and looked at Song Yu. Do you have any other methods? If you help us catch this burglar, I promise not only to persuade the county head magistrate to bestow the full reward upon you as if you've caught the burglar yourself, but also an additional generous reward. You mentioned the burglar is cowardly and suspicious. That's my personal judgment. You're experienced, so I think you must be right. But what does that have to do with catching the burglar? What you don't know is that earth-traversing technique, like wall-passing technique 3, require the practitioner to believe firmly in their success. If the practitioner doubts or feels apprehensive, they might smother to death underground or get stuck in a wall. Xianxia explained. Therefore, people who practice these techniques have always been either resolute and brave or stupid imbeciles. Xianxia was genuinely knowledgeable about these techniques. Hidden Dragon Temple had complete manuals on earth traversing and wall passing techniques. He even understood their principles very well, but he didn't know how to use them himself. The principles that it exists if one believes in it, and faith strengthens while doubt weakens applies to many techniques, but these particular techniques have an inherent flaw. They always carry a risk of failure, no matter how well the practitioner has learned it or how skillful he is. Only the probability of the risk varies. If you invest painstaking effort into studying it for half a lifetime, you would at most lower the risk somewhat. Yet this contradicts the previously mentioned. The practitioner must believe firmly in their success. Therefore, few highly skilled cultivators know how to use these techniques. The more they understand them, the more they know their flaws and the more their confidence wavers during usage. This increases the likelihood of failure, actually creating a vicious cycle. These techniques are more often used by petty criminals. After listening, Constable Luo frowned. Over this period, I've come face to face with the burglar several times, but he always escapes due to his earth-traversing technique. Last month, I discovered where he lives and feel I understand him somewhat. I believe he's somewhat stupid at most, and definitely not brave or resolute like your description, though he can't be described as an imbecile. Was he skilled in this field in the past? He was just a down-and-out scholar who was unable to pass the imperial exams. He learned this earth-traversing technique somewhere and turned to crime. Perhaps someone behind the scenes imparted it to him without informing him about the flaw, or they used secret techniques to suppress his doubts and anxiety. Or maybe he learned the technique without understanding its profundity. Xianxia paused, glancing at the gifts Constable Luo brought out of the corner of his eyes. After thinking for a moment, he said, "If either of these is true, I have a stratagem that you can try. However, I only invite you to try it and I don't dare to guarantee success. Please tell me. Just expose the flaw." "How?" "Do you know a book called Chronicles of Peach and Plum Seasons?" Chronicles of Peach and Plum Seasons. Constable Luo couldn't see the connection between foiling the art of earth traversing and a book. Fortunately, Great Yan had the highest literacy rate in history, and he came from a prominent family, so he had learned to read. After thinking for a long while, he actually remembered. It seemed to be a collection of strange and eerie stories, akin to a compilation of mysterious fantasy tales about demons and ghosts. "I have some impression of it. Next time you encounter the thief, just tell him that Chronicles of Peach and Plum Seasons mentions someone who often used earth-traversing techniques and ended up suffocating 3 kai underground." "Will it work?" "Possibly." "What?" Constable Luo was taken aback. Although he felt it seemed even more far-fetched than digging pits and filling them with manure, he indicated that he would take note of it. After chatting a bit more, Xianxia saw him off. Chronicles of Peach and Plum Seasons was well known. Such miscellaneous books sold well. There was no awareness of copyright in this era, so many bookstores had published it. The book's compiler was a Taoist himself, and he had experienced many of the stories himself or personally heard of them from others. The details were highly realistic. Anyone with a slight connection to Taoism could see this. The burglar, being cowardly and suspicious, would likely investigate upon hearing this. Even if he was illiterate, hearing such a credible statement backed with evidence would cause his heart to waver. If it worked, great. If not, he could think of something later. Xianxia shook his head and began putting away the items. He hung the cured meat and sausages on the kitchen rafters and stored the dark brown sugar, tea cakes, and wine in the kitchen. Despite being a rented haunted house, it now felt more like a home. "This food will last a while," Xianxia murmured, then he looked at the cloth. It was first-rate material, probably the most valuable among the gifts. He looked at the old robe he was wearing and thought he might have a new one made. However, the cloth was too florid, and he preferred plain colors. In the end, he decided against it. Although the robe had grown old with use, for many years it had served him well by covering him up and providing warmth. It had long since become broken in until it was most comfortable and suited to him. At present, it had no holes nor was it torn. It continued to cover him up and provide warmth. How could he discard it because it was a little old? Returning to the courtyard, he saw Lady Calico under the stone table. She was having fun pawing at the hemp rope, originally used to carry the wine that hung down from the table. "As I have enough joy within, I do not feel my enjoyment of my meals and clothes are lesser than other people's." 4. This was true for Xianxia, and also Lady Calico. 1. Chapter 16, A Night Visitor. After some light rains a few days later, autumn arrived in Yidu. Song Yu went out, as usual, to listen to storytelling. He spent more than 10 wen on tea in the afternoon and drank until he was half full. When the old storyteller reached the most exciting part, he gave a few more wen, spending exactly a total of 20 wen. He stepped on wet stone slabs and fallen damp leaves to return to the little courtyard house. As soon as he opened the door, the calico cat ran from the kitchen towards him. As she got closer, she slowed down and looked up at him. Like this, she looked no different from an ordinary house cat, but she was enlightened and could speak human language. Taoist priest, where did you go again? Same as a few days ago, Song Yu answered honestly. Would you like to go again? I'll take you with me tomorrow. The calico cat hesitated a little but didn't answer. Instead, it shifted its gaze. What are you holding in your hand? It seemed this cat didn't like storytelling. Song Yu thought so, and brought out what he was holding. There were new mandarin oranges available around Yidu. On his way back, he saw someone had set up a stall by the road and was selling them very cheaply, so he bought 2 caddies. Then he also heard someone hawking candied haws. One, he didn't really crave them, but he hadn't tasted them for many years, so he couldn't resist buying a skewer. The man and the cat gathered around the stone table. Song Yu knew that most cats didn't like the scent of mandarin oranges, so he put the oranges aside. He picked up the candied haws and took one off with his hand first. Do you eat candied haws? Fruit. Yes, it is fruit, hawthorn. Cats don't eat fruit. Surely sometimes they do. The calico cat turned her head and gave him a look that seemed to say, Are you the cat, or am I the cat? After pondering for a few seconds, she said, Calico cat won't be eating it. Song Yu thought this over carefully for a while, then understood that Calico cat was likely equivalent to Lady Calico, her self-reference. You really won't eat it? Not tasty. I think it's tasty. Then I'll try one. Seeing the candied haw in front of her, the calico cat stretched her neck to sniff it carefully. She looked at it, then looked at Song Yu. Both her sense of smell and reason told her that this wouldn't taste good. However, after some hesitation, she still opened her mouth. She gently took a bite. Her small canines smoothly pierced the candied haw. The outer sugar layer had a crisp texture, and the hawthorn inside was also bitten off. The calico cat chewed alternately with both sides of its teeth. Song Yu didn't look at her. He minded his own business and took another haw for himself. He put it into his mouth. He bit through the sugar coating easily, and it made a slight cracking sound in his mouth. Then the hawthorn exploded with both sweet and sour flavors. The hard hawthorn seed kept colliding with his teeth, producing a crunchy sound. Song Yu couldn't help closing his eyes. This era might need more than 1,000 years to reach modernity. Yet, the taste of this snack wasn't much different from his memory. For a moment, he forgot he was a stranger in a foreign land. After a long time, when the sweet and sour flavors had dissipated in his mouth, Song Yu opened his eyes. The calico cat had also finished eating the candied haws, leaving only a few hawthorn seeds on the stone table. 2 of them had been bitten open, possibly partially swallowed. Song Yu gathered all the hawthorn seeds spat out by the cat. He added the ones he spat out himself and put them all together in his palm. Then he looked at the cat. Was it tasty? What's the outer layer? It's sugar. Sugar is tasty. Hawthorn isn't tasty. Fruit isn't tasty. The calico cat observed Song Yu's expression. Do you like eating it? Yes. I guess monkeys like fruits. Will you eat more? Can I just eat the sugar? Then who will eat the fruit? You eat it, you like it. Then I'd have to eat what you licked. It's just been licked. It has your saliva. It's just saliva. I'm afraid not. Then I won't eat any more. The calico cat's tone was clear and forceful. After speaking, she turned and jumped off the stone table. She swayed her bottom as she walked away. Song Yu didn't mind and continued savoring the snack. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside. Intuition told him it was Constable Luo. Song Yu had just finished the last candied haw. He placed the bamboo stick on the stone table before getting up to open the door. Sure enough, Constable Luo stood outside. Constable Luo was still wearing the same attire that day, but he had an iron ruler at his waist and 2 men in black clothes and boots behind him. Upon seeing Song Yu, he cupped his hands. Greetings, mister. I am here to thank you and bring gifts. After a slight pause, he turned to the men beside him and said, Quick, pay your greetings. The 2 men behind him immediately cupped their hands and greeted him. Please come in. Song Yu let them into the courtyard and closed the door. He led them through the courtyard to the hall where they sat down. He then brought out the teacups Constable Luo had given him a few days ago. He placed them in front of them. Without his visibly pouring tea, the cups seemed to fill gradually with tea on their own. The three were immediately amazed. Looking closer, they saw the tea in the cups was jade green with white froth. The tea aroma was enticing, clearly a fine tea. Please enjoy the tea. You truly have the methods of an immortal. Thank you, mister. The three quickly thanked him and lifted their cups to sip the tea. From what you said, you have caught the earth-traversing burglar. Xianxia went straight to the point. Indeed, Constable Luo reluctantly put down the teacup. He turned excitedly to thank Xianxia. You have incredible foresight. Without even meeting the burglar, just a few words of guidance made his art of earth-traversing method ineffective. It's truly admirable. Did the arrest go smoothly? Very smoothly, Constable Luo said. 3 days ago, we encountered the burglar and shouted the words you taught us. When we found his hiding place again yesterday during the third watch-due, he tried to escape using his earth-traversing technique. However, he had only entered the ground halfway when he got stuck there, allowing us to capture him on the spot. That's good. You've eliminated a menace for the people again. Constable Luo paused and fished out a red cloth bundle from his bosom. As we agreed beforehand, we're treating it as if you were the one who caught the burglar and the reward should go to you. Here are the 20 taels 3, reward is stated in the notice, and the remaining 10 taels are a personal gift from my superior. Nobility in the city have been repeatedly pressuring us recently. My superior also had a hard time but couldn't express it, so he wanted to thank you for helping him out of trouble. Xianxia took the red cloth bundle and opened it. Inside were 3 pieces of girdled beehive silver 4, each stamped with the characters 10 taels. They were great yans, officially minted silver. They were heavy in his hand, and his heart felt heavy too. Paper money really cannot compare with this feeling, let alone a string of digits on an electronic screen. However, Xianxia only took 2 pieces and handed the remaining one back to Constable Luo. He didn't say that he only provided a stratagem and didn't deserve these 20 taels. Nor did he say the constables had worked hard day and night and should share the reward. It would be tiresome to do things that increase his obligations. Other than the reward of 20 taels that they had agreed upon beforehand, he didn't want to take the 10 taels personally gifted by the county head magistrate. It was for the same reason. He didn't want to increase his obligations. Constable Luo immediately understood. He looked somewhat troubled but dared not go against the wishes of such a master. He had no choice but to put it away. Then he said, However, Magistrate Liu greatly admires you upon hearing about your deeds from me and wishes to host a banquet to thank you. If you would do us the honor, it would be scheduled for noon tomorrow at Xianxia restaurant. I don't know if you... Perhaps Constable Luo himself hadn't noticed, but his tone and attitude had unconsciously become very respectful in front of Xianxia. Even though Xianxia hadn't done much. No, Xianxia refused bluntly with a slight smile. I am just an idle cultivator from the mountains who is only fond of peace and quiet. I am not worthy of such favor from your superior. I understand. Thank you for your trouble. It's no trouble at all. Constable Luo respectfully finished his tea. We still have duties to attend to, so we won't disturb you any longer. I will report back to the county head magistrate. If there are any future developments in the case that might involve you, I will certainly come to inform you. Thank you, Chief. I'll take my leave. The other 2 also hurriedly rose with him. Yidu was the seat of Yizhu, the 3rd largest city in the country. The constables here had seen much, but they couldn't help feeling uneasy facing a real master like this. The 3 didn't feel embarrassed either. The county head magistrate wanted to get to know Mr. Song, but even he needed to carefully get Constable Luo to act as go-between. Creak! The creak of the wooden door's hinge was still rusty and drawn out. It was quite annoying to hear. Xianxia frowned as he stood at the door. Upon turning around, he saw the Calico cat had jumped back onto the stone table at some time. She had lowered her head to lick the bamboo stick he had finished where some sugar remained. Xianxia shook his head and went inside to do the accounts. He had been in Yidu for a while. The city was prosperous and prices were high. Living expenses in the city were considerable. Adding rent and purchases made after moving in, and also frequently going to the Gulen Wash recently to listen to stories, he had spent almost several thousand wen. He should spend less in the future. These 20 taels should last a long time, right? \\\\. 2 nights later. The weather was cool and refreshing, perfect for sitting idly. Xianxia lit an oil lamp and quietly read by the window. The window in front of him was wide open. A full moon hung in the night sky, already rising above the city. There were no neon city lights and no traffic noises. There were only the eaves of the ancient-style buildings and the full moon sharing a mutual loneliness. The dark roof tiles reflected the moonlight, with the pure darkness bearing the pure bright moonlight. Behind him, the Calico cat lay quietly, eyes half closed. The night was so quiet that only the sound of pages turning could be heard. This book Yudi Jisheng also had a style unique to this world. In addition to recording famous mountains and great rivers, renowned Taoist and Buddhist temples, and popular scenic spots visited as well as eulogized in poetry and essays by famous literary figures past and present, it also detailed some mysterious, fantastic, and mystical places. For instance, Yunding Mountain, which is rumored to have been frequented by immortals. Dehu City, where the fire god hibernates in mythology. The descriptions were very detailed. He didn't know how long he had been reading. The night grew deeper, and the smoke from the oil lamp stung his eyes. Song Yu decided to call it a night and go to bed. He blew out the reading lamp and was bathed in moonlight. As he closed the book in the moonlight, he saw the Calico cat behind him had woken up at some time. She crawled closer and jumped onto the desk, eyes fixed outside the window. Song Yu had also noticed the sound outside. Scratching sounds came from outside the courtyard wall, as if someone was climbing the wall. However, the sound was unlike climbing, more like hard objects bumping into the wall and sharp things scratching the wall. The night wind carried faint panting noises, and there was the clatter of tiles falling and breaking. An enormous, ferocious head outside the courtyard wall swayed and reflected the moonlight. Chapter 17, Disturbing My Quiet Cultivation. Huff huff. It sounded like someone was operating an old bellows, or the heavy panting of a giant monster. Looking in the direction of the sound, Song Yu saw that the white figure was still floating around the courtyard, as she usually did at this hour. However, behind the white figure, he could vaguely see two massive figures clambering roughly over the courtyard wall and entering the yard. They were over a jianghu tall, but moved silently. Only when they stepped into the brightest patch of moonlight in the courtyard could he see their true forms clearly. They had ghostly green faces covered with curly red beards as well as disheveled red hair. They had gaping bloody mouths with tusks sticking upwards, as well as broken jagged canines inside. Their bodies were strong inverted triangles, covered in sinewy muscles that bulged in lumps. Their arms hung down to their knees, with palms as large as the palm leaf fans used by the neighborhood women to fan themselves at night. Their nails were curved and sharp like hooks, capable of impaling and lifting a person with a single swipe. When they came, even the white figure in the courtyard was momentarily stunned. These were definitely not humans, nor were they demons, ghosts, gods, or immortals. They were man-eating Yakshaswan. There are ghosts. The Calico cat had arched her back, and the fur on her back was standing on end. She stared at the Yakshas in the courtyard, who seemed to be searching for something, then turned to whisper to Song Yu, "Let's run." No need. Song Yu had already figured it out. There was no ghastly wind, no foul stench. Although these Yakshas' movements were not clumsy and sluggish, they were not agile enough. They were not real Yakshas. This was a type of magic. Upon closer inspection, though they appeared ferocious and strong, there was something awkward and out of place about them. They were either badly drawn or cut out badly. They were paper Yakshas. This was a Buddhist technique that used paper to draw Yakshas, then cutting them out and casting spells to animate them so that they would obey the caster. Originally used to guard temples and altars, it later unfortunately fell into the hands of talented jianghu eccentrics who learned it. It was often used for robbery and murder. Although these were paper Yakshas, their ferocity rivaled that of real ones. If the caster had some attainments in this field, they could even surpass real Yakshas. Not only did they possess supernatural strength, the hard parts of their bodies were like solid rocks. Their soft parts were like tree bark, and they had no fear of death. Even if their level of enlightenment was relatively low, normal, skilled jianghu people would have to be cautious if they encountered them. However, they had a fatal weakness. Song Yu placed his hand on the Calico cat's back, stroking it from head to tail. He told her softly not to panic, then he turned and stepped outside. Upon hearing movement, the two Yakshas immediately turned their heads. Their eyes, which like bronze bells, stared at him. The Yakshas spread their arms wide, and their massive bodies actually soared more than a zhang into the air. They covered half the courtyard in a single bound, both lunging at him. "Fire, ignite!" As soon as he finished speaking, a blazing huge fire ignited in the courtyard with a whoosh. Although the Yakshas were clearly the size of bulls, they burned like hollow paper figures coated in oil in this blazing fire and were instantly consumed by the flames. In just a few moments, they were reduced to a few pieces of blackened yellow paper laden with black ashes drifting down. After all, being made of paper, their greatest fear was fire. If one did not know this, and tried to chop them with sabers or shoot them with arrows, it might take a whole squad of soldiers to dispatch them. As for jianghu people, they would also need some martial arts skills. Yet if one could see they were paper yakshas and knew that they feared fire, even an exorcist without any skills could easily destroy them. All things mutually generate and restrain one another. There is always a way to break any technique. The profundity in this is indescribable. In the blink of an eye, the fire had died down. The night returned to its original state, silent and bathed in moonlight. Xianxia raised his hand and opened it. The last piece of yellow paper whose corner still smoldered landed on his palm, where the sparks quickly extinguished. Xianxia withdrew his hand and turned around. Lady Calico was sitting properly behind him with her tail wrapped around her little paws. Seeing him turn and return to the room, she hurriedly followed. Whoosh! The oil lamp lit itself, illuminating the room dimly. Xianxia pulled out the chair and sat down in front of the table. The Calico cat jumped onto the table, staring intently at him. You're so powerful. Lady Calico, you flatter me. Xianxia carefully studied the corner of the paper in the lamplight. This yaksha had been crafted from a large sheet of yellow hemp paper, the same kind used for making talismans. In the moonlight, he could faintly see an eye of the yaksha on the corner of the paper. Looking closer, he could even see the detailed cinnabar lines on it and symbols dotted with blood. It was actually good paper that was hard to come by. Thick and durable, the material had a slightly reddish hue. Lady Calico asked, Are all Taoist priests this powerful? Not really. Then why are you so powerful? How else could I protect you? Xianxia responded casually while pondering the paper. He had not been in Yidu long. He had spent his days going out to listen to stories or cooking and cultivating at home. He had never made any enemies. The only things he had done were eradicating the fog spirit on Jinyang Road and helping Constable Luo capture the burglar who could traverse through the earth. Could it be that some peculiar talented eccentric had heard that a Taoist resided here and decided specially to visit and test him in this manner? At that moment, he heard Lady Calico's clear and delicate childish voice again. Where did the ghost come from? Xianxia did not feel vexed at all and patiently replied, I don't know yet. Why did it attack us? I don't know yet. You don't know yet. The Calico cat repeated his words, staring at him. In any case, it is impolite not to reciprocate. Xianxia put away the piece of paper. Since the other person had already paid a visit, he should pay them a return visit based on both sentiment and reason. \\\\. Early the next morning. Xianxia seemed to have forgotten the events of the previous night. He leisurely chopped some pickled vegetables and made himself a bowl of pickled vegetable noodles. This was considered quite a luxurious breakfast these days. It was thanks to the 20 taels of silver he had received a few days ago. As for Lady Calico, she ate the mouse she had caught. After cooking the noodles and putting them aside, Xianxia fetched a broom to sweep up the ashes left over from the night before that had been scattered by the wind. At that moment, he somewhat regretted that though Lady Calico had been enlightened, her cultivation level was insufficient for transformation. If she could take human form, even as a child, he could coax her into doing chores like sweeping and stoking the fire, giving him some leisure. He only started eating once the cleaning was done. The pickled vegetable noodles were made using the method for big pot noodles from his hometown in his previous world. The broth had a little foxnut starch added and thus appeared somewhat thick. All the flavors were in the broth, which clung thickly to the noodles, making them exceptionally flavorful. The sour and hot soup was appetizing and warming. Swallowing a bite in the early morning made him feel comfortable from his throat to his heart. After finishing, he didn't wash the dishes, but sat idly in the courtyard. He listened to the city waking up and watched the Calico cat chase and play with fallen leaves. He let yellow plum leaves fall on him and enjoyed the warm early morning sunlight filtering through the yellow plum branches. He peeled a mandarin orange for dessert. In that moment, he was in heaven and felt like a little immortal living without a care. Lady Calico didn't like the scent of mandarin oranges and hated the oil that squirted out when they were peeled most of all. She was originally playing at his feet but quickly shrank away, even staring at him with puzzled eyes from a distance. Xianxia paid her no mind, putting one segment of orange after another into his mouth. It was both sweet and sour, full of juice. It even made him narrow his eyes in delight. He only remembered something after finishing the orange. He reluctantly took out the piece of paper from the previous night and examined it many times while holding it up against the sky. Then he let out a long sigh. Lady Calico, please look after the house. The Calico cat's eyes immediately narrowed upon hearing this. Where are you going? To find someone. Who? The one who troubled us last night. Lady Calico said, I will go with you. All right. Wash your hands first. All right. The man and the cat went out together. They investigated outside the courtyard. Song Yu couldn't help being somewhat vexed when he saw that the spot where the two yakshas had climbed over the wall into the courtyard last night was now badly damaged by their hooked claws. According to the contract, he would either have to compensate the landlord or repair it for him before moving out. He continued searching until he finally found a red brush mark at the base of the east courtyard wall on the outside next to the ground, still imbued with magic. That was it. Those yakshas whose enlightenment level was low could manage if the target was near but would get lost if it was far. To direct them to harm someone, markings had to be made in advance. The other party must have visited yesterday or the day before yesterday. Song Yu examined it, then turned to leave. He should go and inquire at that paper shop. Song Yu had a hunch he would soon have his answer. \\\\*. Meanwhile, Constable Luo had just left for work. After walking a few steps along the alley and passing by Song Yu's little courtyard house, he suddenly stopped, turned his head and looked over. He saw several vertical claw marks on the wall. They were the width of 3 fingers and 1 to 2 kai long, as if a savage beast had ravaged the wall. They all clustered around the top of the wall. Many of the tiles from the rain eaves had fallen, leaving a gap and broken pieces littered the ground. What? Constable Luo couldn't help bending down and picking up a piece to inspect it closely. The tile fragments on the ground were as small as fingernails, most of them similarly sized, as if crushed by something. What had climbed over the wall here? Furthermore, it had done so without any skill. Constable Luo's first thought was that this climber was absolutely not human. Not only was it not human, it was probably also a large creature with sharp claws like knives. Constable Luo frowned, feeling apprehensive inside. With such a monster, was the Taoist priest all right? He hurriedly ran to the courtyard door and started knocking and calling out the Taoist priest's name, but there was no response. He wanted to break in, but he didn't dare. He was unsure if he should. For a moment, even a decisive man like him couldn't make up his mind. Eventually, he learned from a passing neighbor that the master had left around the time it took to burn an incense stick earlier, possibly to buy groceries. Constable Luo was relieved and waited at the door for around the time it took to burn 2 incense sticks. He only left when he was about to be late for work. Chapter 18. Courtesy demands reciprocity. West of the city, Tian Temple. Master Guangheng stood before the hall of 10,000 Buddhas, gazing calmly into the distance as he turned the prayer beads in his hand bead by bead. Building Taoist and Buddhist temples in the city center might not be conducive to peaceful cultivation, but it certainly attracted the most incense and offerings. Though it wasn't yet noon, Tian Temple was already teeming with an endless stream of worshippers. The blue smoke from the incense burners could be seen from several streets away. No temple outside the city could match this. Master Guangheng. Amitabha. Whenever a familiar worshipper passed by and greeted him, he would lower his head and respond with a smile, but his inner thoughts were far from peaceful. He had sent paper yakshas the night before to cause trouble for that meddlesome cultivator in the city, but they never returned and had silently lost contact with him. The technique of creating paper yakshas was not as simple as just drawing yaksha and symbols on a piece of paper. It required long-term accumulation to make them come alive and imbue them with spirituality. Continuous sacrifices and refinement were necessary to give the yakshas strong bodies that were impervious to weapons. Those 2 sheets of paper were expendable. Their loss was not significant. However, losing the spirituality within them meant he had to start over from scratch. Years of accumulation, and 2/3 were gone. Master Guangheng knew his opponent was remarkable, but he was really reluctant to accept it. He had thought that perhaps the opponent just happened to see that these were paper yakshas and just happened to know to use fire to counter them, thus winning the first round. So he sent out a dream demon he had nurtured for many years for a second magic battle last night. He cast the spell during the 3rd watch, but unexpectedly the dream demon had not returned by the 5th watch, and only came back late when dawn approached. It turned out that his opponent had posted a talisman at the entrance. This talisman alone kept the dream demon lingering outside the door, anxiously unable to enter. It was forced to return as dawn approached. Dream demon frequently entered people's dreams to create nightmares or pleasant dreams. It was a significant aid for swindling people out of incense and offerings. It could take lives in dreams, undetected by gods or ghosts. Nurtured by years of temple incense and offerings, the dream demon's abilities and intelligence were far superior to ordinary demons and ghosts, yet a little talisman had blocked it. Master Guangheng was deeply alarmed at once. Aside from the yakshas and the dream demon, he had few skills left. Now he realized that the opponent's skills far surpassed his own. In his unease, He commanded the last paper yaksha and a few paper soldiers and generals to stand guard inside his room. He only felt somewhat calmer when he heard the temple's bell at dawn. When a disciple came to call him for a meal, he finally emerged from his state of terror and gradually came to a realization. How would a newcomer to Yidu know it was him? Yidu was a vast city with a sea of people. How would he find him? Who would dare to suspect that a senior monk from Taeyan Temple was behind the nighttime supernatural attacks? Without his noticing, it was already noon. Master Guangheng turned to see a young novice ringing the bell in the garret. Ding, dong. Melodious bell sound carried very far. Xianxia ascended the steps, dressed in an old robe. The Calico cat followed him, constantly looking around. Worshippers by his side were endlessly coming and going. Among them were many jianghu people. It was uncertain whether they were accustomed to lodging in temples or had managed to sneak into the city without travel passes and had no choice but to stay here. The incense and offerings are truly abundant. Xianxia was a cultivator coming from a Taoist temple which he was heir to. Thus the monks here were somewhat peers in the same industry. Upon seeing so many worshippers, his first thought was to estimate how much in donations this would bring in daily based on the income model of Hidden Dragon Temple. A temple manager must handle daily necessities. Even cultivators need to eat. Meow, the calico cat behind echoed him, raising her head high at the same time to look around at the Buddhist statues in the temple and the huge furnace cauldron filled with incense sticks. If she had known earlier that they were visiting other people's temple, she probably wouldn't have wanted to come. If she had known it would be such a large temple with dazzling golden deity statues and clouds of incense, she definitely wouldn't have come. But now she could only brace herself and go forth. Meow! She was trying hard to pretend to be an ordinary cat. Xianxia didn't understand what she was saying, but slowed his pace to let her catch up. He walked alongside her, looking around as they went. He wanted to learn from the advanced experiences of his peers in the same industry. In terms of expanding numbers of followers and attracting incense and offerings, Buddhism in Great Yan dealt Taoism a crushing defeat. Great Yan's Taoism emphasized living according to one's desires and being unrestrained. Living and cultivating in the way one wished was preferred. If worshippers came, they might be ignored. Even financial backers were often not treated with much importance. Compared with Buddhism, it was more or less somewhat aloof from politics and material pursuits. Great Yan's Buddhism was much more professional in this regard. Not only did they have stronger missionary zeal, but they also catered better to the notions of believers and those in power. Buddhism's services were also more extensive. Take Taeyan Temple, for example. In addition to incense and incense oils, selling small trinkets and various consecrated items, exorcism and healing, funerals, naming services, they also provided lodging and loan services. Some large temples owned 1,000 mu of land, which they rented out to tenant farmers for profits. Some city temples even acted as commercial markets, where peddlers who set up stalls had to pay them fees. As for Great Yan's Taoist temples, if you were seeking lodging, it would depend on the temple owner's mood. They can't be compared, Xianxia thought. In theory, with gods and Buddhas in abundance in this world, Taoism, as Great Yan's native religion, had the advantage of time and place. According to Great Yan legends, the Heavenly Palace managed 10,000 gods, and Great Emperor Chijin of the Heavenly Palace had the authority to command the Lord of 10,000 Buddhas. Thus it shouldn't be so easy for foreign Buddhism to gain the upper hand. Yet in reality, Buddhism had firmly established itself just on the basis of its strong operational capability and cohesion after it entered Great Yan. Further, it has expanded rapidly. Xianxia had no particular opinion on this. He was just a fake Taoist priest, and in addition he actually understood in his heart that gods and ghosts both came from humans. Moreover, there was no fundamental difference between Buddhism and Taoism. Both had great and common people as well as good and evil ones. There's no difference in human intelligence based on religious preference. After all, they were all just people. With these thoughts, Xianxia had already wandered around the whole temple and eventually reached the hall of 10,000 Buddhas right in the center. He stopped at the entrance. Looking up, he saw the couplets on both sides of the door. Be a good person with a righteous heart, you will have good health, a stable soul and restful dreams. Do some good deeds, heaven and earth will bear witness, and you will be respected by gods and ghosts. Xianxia smiled and stepped inside. A strong scent of incense greeted him. The appearance of the Lord of 10,000 Buddhas statue in the center was solemn. He was surrounded by bodhisattvas with either kindly or compassionate expressions, while the guardian deities on both sides had awe-inspiring, glowering faces. Incense smoke rose in spirals like clouds or mist. Many worshippers knelt on the prayer cushions. There were men and women, the young and the old. Some prayed silently, others aloud, some kowtowed and then got up to leave, while people came in continuously from outside to take their places on the prayer cushions. Countless wishes glowed, burning hotter than the sun. Chaotic voices filled his ears. Some prayed for the bodhisattva to heal their family members, severe illnesses. Others prayed to the Buddha for business success, for children to succeed in life, or to cure infertility. The voices of their desires and pleas entered his ears. Sigh. There are always 3 sticks of incense before the Buddha, but human life is filled with countless worries. After song, you finished sighing and he looked around but he saw no monks there. Checking the time, it was already mealtime. He also went up to offer 3 sticks of incense. When he looked back at the Calico cat, he saw her hiding outside the hall's threshold. The threshold was somewhat higher than her, and she was standing on her hind legs with her front paws on the threshold. She poked her little head over the threshold and peered anxiously at him. Songyu chuckled and walked out. Let's go. Where to? To the Hall of 5 Observances. What is that? A place for dining. Are you going there to eat? Maybe. With that, Songyu suddenly stopped and threw a few wen into the donation box. He had decided to have lunch there. I've heard Taeyan Temple's vegetarian meals are quite famous. I don't know if they'll let you in. Oh. Lady Calico was still shaken by the top-tier big shots in the same industry they'd encountered earlier. She subconsciously didn't dare to act rashly in this place, so she followed obediently. Fortunately, the novice at the Hall of 5 Observances did not stop her. The hall was bustling with seated worshippers inside, and there were also many monks eating. At Taeyan Temple, monks and worshippers ate together, though most monks sat with other monks and worshippers with other worshippers. They only mixed when there were really no seats left. Songyu scanned the room coolly, and then walked towards one of the few empty seats. Master, may I sit here? Master Guangheng subconsciously sized Songyu up. He held a high position in Taeyan Temple as well as in the hearts of worshippers. Even though Taeyan Temple monks and worshippers dined together, most worshippers would not sit with him at the same table to show their respect. Usually, only honored guests would have the courage to come over or be invited by him. This person did not seem like an honored guest. Yet, seeing that he was a stranger, and noticing that the hall was nearly full, he more or less made up his mind. No matter what, he certainly wouldn't go as far as to refuse. Benefactor, please go ahead. Thank you. Songyu smiled and sat down to dine with Master Guangheng, 2 other monks, and 3 honored guests at the same table. There weren't any good dishes. He had a bowl of vegetable porridge with pickled radish, fermented bean curd, and 2 small plates of appetizers. He felt they tasted ordinary. He more or less realized that the vegetarian meals here might be famous due to their accessibility to the lower classes and long-term donations of porridge to charity. Meanwhile, the others at the table finished their meals in succession and left politely after taking their leave. However, Master Guangheng was preoccupied and ate more slowly. As he ate, he suddenly heard someone call him. Master Guangheng. Master Guangheng looked up and saw it was the young worshipper who had arrived last. He was gazing at him coolly. At some point, a cat appeared and sat beside him. Amitabha. Master Guangheng temporarily set aside his worries and placed his chopsticks on his bowl. He joined his palms and asked mildly, Do you recognize me? I do. The worshipper smiled, still staring at him. He continued, But it seems Master Guangheng does not recognize me. A sense of foreboding suddenly arose in Master Guangheng's heart, and he quickly confessed, I am forgetful. May I have your name? My name is Songyu. Who? Master Guangheng was instantly shocked. His eyes widened. His reaction instantly drew many curious glances.